Hello and welcome back to the Bears and Lions podcast. I'm Kyle Vaught. And before we get started, first and foremost, I have to wish you all a happy new year. We are into 2026 and it is so exciting that we are in the beginning of a new year because that means that this whole entire year is this blank slate almost that we get to write the stories that we want to write. We get to write the future that we want to write in the future. And what happened in 2025, it does matter. And yes, we will look at it. And yes, we will kind of analyze it at times, but it's done. It's not something that we can change. So it's said and done. But 2026 is not done yet. We've just started it. Therefore, we get to build it into whatever we need to do. So before we get into this episode's content, I want to take a moment and I want you, wherever you are, to celebrate where you are in 2026. Because chances are, if you're like me, you need to be reminded. Because even at the beginning of the year, sometimes we look back and we say, I'm not where I wanted to be at this time this year. And last year, I had all these hopes and dreams and these resolutions that didn't come to fruition, and I'm not where I thought I would be. And so it's easy to get into this mentality of, you know what, there's not much changed. Same old, right? We say that phrase, same old, or same stuff, different day. But the reality is that all of us are changing. All of us are growing. All of us have developed skills. And if you accurately look back over the last year, you are not the same person that you were in 2025 and at the beginning of 2025. And I think it's so important to look and celebrate all of the stress and the struggle and the change that has taken place, and celebrate the little changes, even though you might not be where you want to be and I might not be where I want to be at this very moment. However, the struggle is proof of the progress. The very fact that you don't feel satisfied and that you want to be better is proof that you are consistently getting better year after year, or month after month, or week after week, or even day after day. You're getting better. So celebrate it. I'm so proud of you. You made it through 2025. You've faced so many different battles. You've struggled, you've fought, but you made it. And now you're in 2026 and you have a blank slate of a year ahead of you. You have the opportunity to basically write your own story for 2026. And that's the beauty of the beginning of every year. Secondly, I am asking you, if you like this podcast, I am asking you to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with others, especially with friends or families or people who you think would be encouraged by these type of conversations. This truly helps the algorithm. And my goal is to grow this podcast and to grow this reach, to reach more people in 2026 more than ever before. And I can't do it without you. That's the reality. I get these little notifications on Spotify and on YouTube. Be sure to tell people to like, subscribe, and share the podcast in order to grow. And I really do mean it. 2026 is a year that I believe the year of harvest in a lot of ways is the word of 2026 for me. And we're going to talk about that in weeks to come because I do think it's just so unique and beautiful. And harvest, it has this beautiful frame to it. So please like, subscribe, share this, whether you're sharing on Apple Podcast or Spotify or YouTube. All of them help, and it's just a very great encouragement. So thank you so much. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in every week. I have said this before, but this podcast is as much for me as it is for anybody else who listens. These are conversations that I have inside my head. They're conversations that I need to write down or talk through. And I believe that I'm not the only one who needs to hear this stuff. So I do believe that there are certain things that I think resonate with not just me, but with you as well. And I hope that it does. And I hope it encourages you to not only be the best version of yourself, but to inspire others to be the best version of themselves. And so we will continue to bleed into other communities and other people and other people's lives. We're going to encourage them to live courageously. And what I like to say, ferocity and joy. That's what I want us all to live with ferocity and joy. Now, with that being said, let's get into the content of this episode because I am so excited about this. This is the first time I've done this in a while. I haven't really done a full series in quite some time. But we're going to do a 4-week series. And I've been thinking about this for almost a month and a half, probably 6 weeks or so, of this idea of battles and the fact that life is just this battle. And I don't know about you, but if you're like me, sometimes it just feels like life is this never-ending battle. And now we're at the beginning of a year and it's the same stuff, different day, right? Same stuff, different year. It's almost like this repetitive where every day you wake up in like a battle royale game like Fortnite or Warzone, where you wake up and you're just dropped into the middle of this battle that you have to fight your way out of. And by the end of the day, you're completely worn and tired and exhausted, and you just have to do it over again the next day. And so you just keep going and going. And it feels like one battle after another. And no, I'm not talking about the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm just talking about life in general. And I think life is a battle. I think, can we agree on that, right? Can we agree that there are battles that we face that are just so in your face for no reason? They pop out of nowhere. Some of them, of course, are planned, and some of them are easier than others where, okay, yeah, the battle is I'm really hungry and I need to find food. Or maybe the battle is I just haven't been sleeping well and I need to stop drinking caffeine, right? Some battles are easier, but some battles are harder. Some battles are completely unforeseen, where the car breaks down on the side of the road, or a loved one or yourself are diagnosed with an illness of some sort. And so this battle is internalized, where it doesn't just affect you, it affects everybody around you now. And so I've been thinking about these battles and the battles that I've been facing, especially over the last year in 2025, and how did I approach these battles? How did these battles develop me? How did these battles strengthen me? How did these battles actually humble me and impact me in a powerful way? And then how did these battles impact the people around me? And so I've been thinking about this, and over the next 4 weeks, we're going to dig into and do a deeper dive of the battles we face in life. And I'm just going to call it the battles we face, but we're going to focus weekly on the following. So week 1, we're going to go over how do we prepare for a battle, because honestly, YOLOing yourself into each battle each day doesn't end very well all the time, in my experience at least. And also, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. So there's parts of it where it's like, you know what? How do we prepare for a battle correctly? Because, maybe we just have things that we know about, but we've been procrastinating. And we've been procrastinating because we don't really know how to get into it or prepare ourselves or prepare our hearts and minds for that type of battle. So that's what we're going to talk about on week 1, which is going to be today. Week 2 is going to be how do we fight with integrity? And this is important because I wrote this down in my journal. That how you fight actually matters to the people around you, and how you fight also impacts the end result. So what you are battling for, maybe it's a new job, maybe it's a new degree, maybe it's to graduate, maybe it's to be the first person to graduate in your family, or maybe it's to be somebody who is a man of integrity or a woman of integrity, right? Where you're not going to be the person who cheats, you're going to be the person who does it the right way. And does something very difficult. Maybe that's the battle, but how you battle actually impacts the end results. And I wrote this as well. Some people throw rocks, and other people drop bombs. Understanding how to go to battle and how you actually fight with integrity matters. Because I myself have gone into battles and I've completely dropped bombs that have obliterated everything. And I don't want us to do that. And I want to kind of go through some cautionary tales of my own life, but also just encourage you along the way in week 2. Week 3 is going to be how do we win and lose well? Because the reality is that some battles we win, other battles we don't. And if you're like me, you've gone through plenty of battles in life or experiences in life where you feel like you came out the loser. And it can be really frustrating, and it can be hard to feel like you've lost a battle of some sort. But understanding how to win well and then also lose well is an important part of life in general. understanding that some battles aren't even meant for us to win. I've gone to battle many times just with friends. I was never supposed to win that battle, but I literally was just cannon fodder that said, you know what? I know for a fact that my friend needs me here, and I know this is going to be damaging to me, and I know I'm going to lose, but they're going to win because I'm a part of the battle. And so understanding that winning and losing, it doesn't have to be a black and white thing. It can be a little bit gray, and understand that some losses actually become wins in the long run, and other wins actually become losses in the long run. And we're going to talk about that in week 3. And then week 4, we're going to wrap this series up with the battles we face, talking about the aftermath of battle, and how do we respond to the aftermath of battle? Because the reality is in life, you're going to go through a lot of different battles, and you're going to have a lot of different things. But if you just look at battle in general, and I'm talking literal battle with bombs and explosions and gunshots and swords and knives and things like that from old, there is damage that's done. And even if you survive the battle, there's going to be wounds that have to heal, and they're going to need to heal. There's going to be wounds on both sides. And so it's important that when you respond to the aftermath of battle, whether it's a win or a loss, you understand, what was the purpose of this battle? You know, if you're in an argument with a really close friend, what is the purpose of that argument? Are you arguing because it's something that's it's beneficial if you press against each other and the friction sharpens as iron sharpens iron, right? Like if that's the case, then if that's the purpose, then good. Both of you may come out losing. Other times, both of you may come out winning. But I've been through friendships, and I've experienced friendships that we battled in the wrong way. And the aftermath was that not only did I lose my friends, they lost their friends as well. And in the process, everybody hurt. So I want to look at those 4 aspects of the battles we face over the next 4 weeks, because I think that at the beginning of a year, you have such a blank slate, and you have the ability to write the story or prepare for the story, or have a recognition of, hey, this might be one of those key moments in the story of this year. And so as we go through that, I really hope that you'll enjoy this series, because I put a lot of thought into it over the last few weeks, and I definitely have been so encouraged just in writing everything down and understanding what I want to say and how I want to say it. And it's been so encouraging to me because I've had to relive some of my battles, and I've also had to relive some of the lessons that I have gone through. So without further ado, we're just going to jump into week 1, which is going to be all about how do we prepare for battle, and what does that even look like? And I say YOLOing into battle doesn't usually end well, because sometimes that's the way we face our battles, right? They come up out of nowhere, and it's you only live once, so we're just going to make a decision and run with it. And if it all goes to pot, then it all goes to pot. But the reality is that can be so damaging, because if you carry that mentality into, like, your workplace, for example, maybe you have a job that you absolutely hate, but you need a job to pay your bills. If you carry that mentality of YOLO, whatever, like, I show up late, that's not my problem, but it actually is your problem. Because if you are establishing skills and then habits that don't actually show the growth that you need to be able to land your dream job, then the job that you have right now is only going to basically keep you in lock and key of, this is the only thing you can really do. Because if you're not progressing and you're not showing the skills or the desire or the work ethic to grow and be promoted and things like that, then why in the world would any other company hire you? Because you may get your dream job, but if you don't have the habits to keep your dream job, you're going to be out of your dream job really quick. It's like people who, are really all about the talk, but they're not about the walk. And I remember this was me, where I wanted to work out with one of my buddies. He was really, really, really fit and really awesome. And he looked so cool. He had that chin and the hair and everything. And, I was like, man, I would love to work out with you sometime. I think I can keep up. And he was like, yeah, sure. And then we started working out. And very quickly I realized, oh, I don't have the ability to keep up with him. And all I could think about was not throwing up for the next 30 minutes or so until I finally got to this point where I was just like, I can't keep going. Like, dude, you're a beast and I am humiliated because that's what happens. But we do the same thing with life and with the way that we will kind of YOLO ourselves through our battles and YOLO ourselves through life, right? You only live once, so I'm just going to do whatever I can, and whatever I can is whatever I can do. And I've heard that phrase a couple times. I'm going to do whatever I can, and whatever I can do is what I'm going to do. I don't love that phrase because really it abdicates your responsibility and it abdicates your control. You give your control to other people and you give your control to other things. And so if you're somebody who YOLOs, or somebody like me who has YOLO'd in the past, my encouragement is let's not do that. Let's find a plan and let's actually try to learn from our mistakes and move forward. So how we prepare for battle. One of the key things here, some of the battles that we face that just pop up out of nowhere, right? The cars that break down and things like that, we don't really get a chance to prepare for, right? Like those aren't really things that you can foresee in the future and be like, okay, I know that this is going to happen, so I know I'm going to need X amount of money saved up, and I know I'm going to need to do this, X, Y, and Z, because this is going to happen. Other times, there are battles that we face that we do know prior, right? Like maybe it's a test that we're about to take in school, or maybe it's a project at work, right? And if you're like me, sometimes we procrastinate those projects. It's kind of unfortunate that, I can be a procrastinator at times, but I'm fighting that battle and I'm trying to get better. But it's interesting because you have some battles that come out of nowhere and then others that prior. But then you have some battles that were won or lost years ago. You have no control over it, right? And I think of like Apple, right? Like investing in Apple. If you could have invested in Apple before they were big, if you could have invested in Google before they were big, like that battle, how would you have even known way back then versus now, right? If you could have invested in Amazon way back when they were just a, small company, Netflix, etc. Those battles happened years ago, decades ago even. And that's when it was won or lost. And as I've mulled this over the past few weeks, I kind of came to the realization that you might not be as prepared as you think you are, but you can be a little bit more prepared just in general about life. Like you actually can put yourself into a better position to be able to. Like wouldn't it be awesome if you were in a position to invest in Bitcoin, which everybody says is going to be the next big thing, but you never know. But what if you were in a position to invest in Bitcoin or invest in a new company that could be the next Tesla or could be the next Apple or could be the next, IBM? What if you were in a position that you were able to do that, where you specifically focused on your financial time, your financial battles, whether it was saving or living frugal or however that looked for you, or maybe it was just looking for a better job where you make a little bit more money so that you can pay off debt quicker, which is the story of my life. But it's like things like that, right? Where there are things that you can plan. But when I broke this down in my life and how I prepared for battle, especially over 2025 and the battles I faced, the number one thing that I recognized was not all of the circumstances around it. And it wasn't whether the battle happened all of a sudden or if it was something that I knew prior. All of that, was average. That happened throughout the year. But the number one key factor for me was that I understood my terrain of where the battle was taking place much better in 2025. And this is what I mean by that. Let me break it down like this. When you go to battle or when you go to war, back in the olden days, let's say you're going to battle on a hill. I have the high ground, right? Like the whole phrase. But the reality is if you understand your terrain, you plan for certain aspects of your battle. If you don't understand your terrain, then you might not be able to plan things. For instance, if you plan for, okay, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, it's going to be nighttime and it's going to be dark, but you don't realize that where you're actually going to fight this battle is pre-lit, or the moon is so bright and there's no cloud in the sky that it looks almost like the sun and everybody can see everything. It changes the battle and the outcome of the battle extensively. So one of the things that really helped me in 2025 and preparing for my battles was that I started recognizing the terrain of where a battle would take place, so I knew how to better prepare for it. And I'll give you an example. I recognized that there were certain things in my life physically, right? Muscle and body and health and diet and things like that. Physically were becoming an issue. I was drinking more than I wanted to drink. I was staying up a little bit later, even though I'm not really a late night stayer upper, but there are things that, pockets of time where I've definitely had stayed up later. I had become more unhealthy in my eating and my diet. These are all physical things, right? The terrain of the battle is a physical thing that I can choose to do, right? I can eat better. I can eat more protein. I can develop, more time. I can make sure that I go to sleep and wake up at a certain time every night. And the battle that I was facing was physical. And I remember I listened to a lot of podcasts about it. And after a certain amount of time, mentally, I was like, oh yeah, I'm good. But 3 weeks went by where I was still eating like trash. I was still drinking more than I wanted to. And I was still not sleeping very well. But I listened to these podcasts and I was like, but, I have all this understanding and it makes sense. And I'm so encouraged by it. But I wasn't doing it. Physically, I wasn't doing it. The terrain that I had prepared for the battle that I had fought was all mental. I mentally had prepared myself for battle, but I hadn't physically actually done anything about it. And this is what I mean by understanding and knowing your terrain. Some of you are going through financial battles, and I know this battle very well, but it doesn't matter how much physical muscle you put on, you're never going to be able to utilize that physical muscle to pay your bills unless you plan on robbing somebody, which I don't condone. I do not approve of that or encourage that at all. Please don't do that. But the reality is like if you spend all of your time in the gym and less time making money on the side or working really hard to make the sales or working really hard to do other things to earn income to pay your bills, then it won't matter how much muscle you put on. It will matter that everything that you actually need to battle and face is just being procrastinated at or procrastinated towards. So that's where understanding the realm of where you're actually doing the battle and understanding what you're actually going to battle against and what terrain you're going to face this battle on. Is this an emotional battle, right? Maybe you've been in a dark place. It doesn't matter that you have great friends around you or great family around you or a great job, or maybe you have a terrible job and that's just making it worse, but your mental is completely shot. There are certain things that you can do to build that mental. But if you think, oh, you know what? We're going to just eat. We're going to eat and drink and I'll feel better then. No, that just numbs the pain. And so you're fighting on opposite terrains. When you think you're fighting this battle well, you're actually on a completely different realm or a completely different level of where the battle is actually taking place. And it's in my mind, this is how I visualized the entire thing, because for me, I constantly am thinking about this type of stuff. And these are the conversations I have inside my head. And all throughout 2025, I had battles pop up out of nowhere. I had dental procedures that came out of nowhere. I had, different bills and things like that came out of nowhere. But in the process, my goal was, as the battle started, my first thing was recognize, is this financial? Is this emotional? Is this spiritual? Is this physical? If it's, depending on which one it is how I'm going to begin preparing for it and responding to it. Because I think sometimes, even in my own life, as soon as a battle, it didn't matter what it was, I would respond in a physical way. I've got to go work out, which working out is great. And there's so many benefits to it. And I think that working out in that physical side of things is a great battle. It's a great way to go to battle for emotional or mental, because it does clear your head in a lot of ways. And it also really helps with endorphins. Helps with the immune system and all sorts of other stuff as well. But I used to always say the easiest way to silence the voices in your head is to sweat them out. And it's very hard to overthink something, especially when you're in a very frustrated state, maybe mentally or emotionally. It's very hard to overthink things when you're just focused on not being crushed by a barbell. So that's kind of how I look at that. But the understanding the terrain, it really does matter. Because if you are facing a battle with a friend or a relationship, right, and it is a sexual battle, or it is maybe it's not even sexual, maybe it's just sensual, or maybe it's a battle of words, right, a vocabulary battle where you said something that you shouldn't have said, and that hurt that person, and now you're in this battle. You can't always address that battle just simply by going to work out. Like, you might have to actually face it on its own terrain where you have to talk it out. And that's how a lot of the battles that I understand and experienced in 2025 ended up, where because I was able to recognize, oh, this is spiritual. I can't talk my way out of this. This is a spiritual battle. Like I have to pray about this. I have to submit myself to the God of creation and understand that I can't control this. And all of a sudden, when you relinquish that control and you say, oh, there's nothing I can do here. This is a spiritual battle. This is something that I can't control. It takes a lot of the stress off of you. And that battle, you become more of a bystander in some cases. In other cases, I've had very emotional battles, right? And I've recognized, oh, I can't just punch my way out of this. I can't work out myself out of this. I can't physically exercise myself out of this. I actually need to eat and sleep and rest, and whether it's meditation or seeking counsel, I can't do this by myself. This isn't a battle that I can face by myself. And when you recognize that terrain, it really benefits you because you have an understanding of, this is not something that I can YOLO into. I have a plan because now I understand where it is. Like, if you know that it's going to be 30 degrees outside, you wouldn't go out in flip-flops and swim trunks. You would plan for it and prepare for it. It's the same thing with life. We need to recognize what the weather's like. We need to recognize what the terrain is like and where we're going and what we're going to do. We wouldn't take baseball cleats on a 50-mile hike. We would want hiking boots. We wouldn't take flip-flops when we're trying to go through, a snowstorm. We need to plan and prepare ourselves for the correct terrain that we're passing whenever we're facing a battle. It's the same thing when in olden times, when they would go to battle, they would actually do a terrain analysis where they would look, okay, this is where the hill happens. And this is where we can actually, if we can get above or around them, we can flank them here and have a better view of the battlefield and understand what's going on as it's happening in real time. So we need to keep doing this. And generals would do this all the time in way back when. So I want to make sure that we understand that when we are looking at the terrain and when we're looking at these battles and preparing for these battles, that we actually don't just willy-nilly say, okay, here's a battle, I'm just going to face it. No, that we actually take a moment and we recognize, what type of battle is this? And how am I going to attack? How am I going to defend? How am I going to put myself in a better position than just flailing my arms while I run and scream at whatever is in front of me? Because the reality is that sometimes makes it worse. And years ago, I really had to learn that I've pretty much spent half of my life, or over half of my life, claiming to be something I'm not. And I thought because I had studied and I had read about all these life experiences, that meant that I could do it, which was just incorrect. It was just wrong. And I learned that very hard, because I experienced, just because I've read about it doesn't mean I understand it or have been through it. And the truth is that it doesn't matter how much you've read about something or how much you have prepared yourself to be able to handle certain things. If you've never fought in the Colosseum, then you can't call yourself a gladiator. And as I've recognized that, I realized, okay, there are some things that I just have to battle and I have to do, but I have to prepare for it accurately. So I've done that. And in 2025, a lot more of my battles went in a different direction than they ever have in my entire life. A lot more of the battles, I came out understanding that, you know what, that was a battle I was supposed to lose. In other battles, that was a battle I was supposed to win, and I should have done this, this, and this. And I knew I could have prepared for that. And then other battles, I came out and I said, we have victory. Like that I was able to 100% say, I came out the other side, and that was a victory on my part. And I'm very proud of myself for that. Second thing about preparing for battle, and this is important. This is probably number 2. So understanding how your terrain is and what your terrain looks like, and understanding where you're battling, and that matters. But the second thing is choosing your weapon. And this is so important, is understanding that each and every one of us, we have weapons that we're already bringing in, whether it's our fists, whether it's our talents, whether it's our skills, whether it's our gift of gab, or whatever it might be. We have weapons. And what I was going through when this series popped through was a book in the Bible where there's a lot of battles. There's a lot of different battles. But one in particular that I think most people understand, it's David and Goliath. And you may have never opened a Bible in your life, but you can probably get the gist of David and Goliath. The little guy defeats a giant with nothing but a sling and a stone. In fact, this podcast is named after 1 Samuel 17:34 through 37, which David is this shepherd boy who goes to visit his brothers. His dad's like, hey, your brothers are at the battlefield. They're on the front lines. Take them some cheese and wine and some bread. And so David, the youngest of his brothers, goes, finds his brothers, are like, hey, here's a care package from your dad. What's going on here? And this giant from the Philistines named Goliath comes out and basically hurls insults at Israel, and then hurls insults at Israel's God, which is Yahweh or Jehovah, which is the one true God of the Bible. And David's like, dude, like, you're going to let him say that about Israel and about your God, like our God, like this God that we've seen do incredible things in the past, and we have history of these incredible things that God's done. Like, you're going to let him say that? And everybody's like, no, this guy's a giant. He's like 9 feet tall. He's huge. It's massive. None of us want to fight him. And so David, this shepherd boy, goes to the king and says, I'll fight him. And the king says, no. Literally, the king just flat out is like, no, you can't. You are a youth and you're a shepherd. What are you going to do against a seasoned warrior veteran, right? Somebody who has been trained since day one, basically. Not only that, he's a giant and is massive. So what are you going to do about this? And David replies, and this is how we get the name of the podcast, the Bears and Lions podcast. David replies, I was a shepherd of my father's flock. And when a bear would come and take a sheep, or a lion would come and take a sheep, I would go after it and rescue the sheep. And if the bear or lion turned on me, I would grab it by its mane, strike it, and kill it. He essentially says that he lays out his resume and says, if the Lord delivered me from the bear and the lion, then he will deliver me from this Philistine as well. And so the king says, sure. All right. I guess the Lord be with you. Go for it. But the thing is David was not just a shepherd. Even though he says, I was a shepherd of my father's flock, he was not just a shepherd. Because if you read in the chapter prior, you actually find out that he had a lot of other skills. In fact, the king knew David prior to David and Goliath, because the king was going through basically migraines or nightmares, and was like any other normal human being. He wanted music to soothe the headache, right? We go to the same thing whenever we're frustrated, or whenever we're tired, or whenever we're in certain moods. We need certain music to just alleviate some of that stress and anxiety, and we lean toward it. So the king also wanted certain music. And so in chapter 16 of 1 Samuel, the verse 18, it says, one of the servants answered, I have seen a son of Jesse of Bethlehem who knows how to play the lyre. He is a brave man and a warrior. He speaks well and is a fine looking man, and the Lord is with him. So this is prior to David and Goliath, and the king is like, I need like your best musicians. And the servant's like, hey, I know this guy who plays the lyre. And in verse 23, it goes on to say that whenever the Spirit from God came on Saul, and David would take up his lyre and play, then relief would come to Saul, and he would feel better, and the evil spirit would leave him. So there's this process of David has these skills, and most likely he learned how to play the lyre in the in-between from the bears and lions, right? He's sitting around watching sheep throughout the day. He's got nothing else to do. These sheep are just baying and grazing and chilling. So what are you going to do? He picks up the lyre and he starts, doing his little diddle. He learns his secret chord, right? That they play. And he developed this skill in between. And I think it's so important because so many of us have skills that we've developed in the in between. We face battles throughout the week, throughout the year, throughout our lives, and these battles are tough. However, they don't always go on forever. We have new battles, and then sometimes there's breaks in between the battle, and we have skills that are developed through the battles as well. And so we have these moments in the in-between, and what are you doing in the in-between? Are you sitting around? I've met so many people in the last 2 years that are frustrated with their job. They're frustrated with their life. They're either single or in a relationship that they don't want to be in anymore, and they're just frustrated in general. Yet, instead of doing something about it, they sit and just mull over the same decisions and the same situations, and they repeat day after day after day after day the exact same thing, which is insanity, by the way, right? Like, insanity is doing the same thing expecting a different result. Like, that's what you would say, is that's just insane, thinking that you're going to have a different result, but it's just not true. And I know so many people who are like that, who they don't take the in-between to pick up a lyre. They don't take the in-between to pick up a new skill or to try something different. If you've always wanted to learn how to fish, go fishing. If you've always wanted to learn how to golf better, go golfing. If you've always wanted to learn something, photography, take pictures, buy a camera. Go. It doesn't even matter. I saw this guy in Baltimore just walking around with this camera, and he was taking pictures, and I asked him, I was like, hey man, how long have you been doing photography? And he was like, I just started, and I really just wanted to understand the lighting with no sun and just like the clouds, because it was cloudy out that day. And I thought that was so cool. It was just a random cloudy day, and he was like, you know what? I just want to understand the lighting and how it works, so we're going to go take test pictures. And we talked for a little bit, but it's just cool to see what people do in the in between. So David, in his in between of shepherding and just chilling and watching sheep and having to go fight bears and lions, he picked up the lyre and he got really good. He got so good that the king really was excited at the fact that he was a really good lyre player, and whenever he would play, it would soothe the king. So he's not just a shepherd. He has a ton of skills. He has other skills. He has other things that he's picked up along the way. But he, like you and I, when the hobbies that he created, the things that he created, they developed and they grew and they got better and better. Now we fast forward. So we go back to where David and the king are talking about Goliath. And the king says, all right, you've faced the bear and the lion. Like, your faith is clearly there. Go ahead and fight them. Go ahead. But here's my armor and here's my sword. Shiny, king's sword, king's armor. Probably looked awesome, to be honest. But David tried this stuff on and it didn't fit because he had never worn it before. He had never trained in it before. He never moved in it before. And David said, I can't go in these. He said to Saul, I'm not used to them. So he took them off. And then in 1 Samuel 17:40, it says, then he took his staff in his hand. He chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand, approached the Philistine, which is Goliath. How weird would it be if it says, and with his lyre in his hand, he approached the Philistine? With his musical instrument in his hand, he approached the Philistine. It doesn't say that. With the king's sword, he approached the Philistine. It doesn't say that either. Understanding the weapon that you choose when you go to battle is more than just, I'll use whatever. This isn't WWE where you pick up the chair because it's there. Each and every one of us, we have skills. We have amazing skills. And it's easy to look at what other people take into battle. You may look at me and say, oh, like he has so many eloquent things to say or thoughts or whatever. And thank you for that. But I've also gone to school for broadcasting, spent hours upon hours upon hours upon hours in front of a microphone, talking to nobody but myself. I've done radio and I've done play-by-play. Like, I've done stuff on camera and off camera and behind the screen, behind the scenes, all of the above. I've done all of those things. So my skills are different from your skills. And you may look at somebody and say, I wish I had their skills. And it's good to want to develop skills, but it's not good to try to take on somebody else's skills for your own, because that is what Saul tried to do. The king tried to do with his armor to David. He said, look, you can fight Goliath, but I want you to wear my armor because this is what I would go to battle with. I want you to use my sword because this is what I would go to battle with. This is how I would do it. And how many podcasts and how many books and how many social media content pieces have I seen over the last year that basically are like, you should do this, X, Y, and Z. You should stay away from seed oils. You should do this, and you should only eat eggs. You shouldn't eat eggs. You shouldn't eat steak. You should only eat steak. There are so many voices and people who have skills and understand so many different things, and they have God-given talents to do really incredible stuff. Some of them are athletes, some of them are musicians, all this stuff. But they all tell you, you should wear my armor because this is how I would go to battle. But the reality is you can't do that. You may be able to train and learn and get better and then eventually be able to wear armor that's like theirs. But you need to develop your skills and utilize your skills and utilize the weapons that you have to be able to go to battle and face your battles, because you have incredible skills already. The things that you've picked up on the downtime and in the in-between. The reason this podcast is called Bears and Lions is because I believe that when you accurately view your past, you will see all of the bears and lions that you've faced, and it will give you confidence, and it'll give you an understanding of what you're really good at, to where when you finally step into the ring with a Goliath that you want to defeat, right? We're talking about, I want to buy this house. I want to ask her to marry me. I want to have kids, or I want to do this. I want to go to this different job. I want to try something that I could fail at, but you will step into that ring confidently and you'll say, I have the skills to do this. I can do this because I've already exhibited these skills. This isn't a new skill. This isn't their skills that they're trying to put on top of me. This isn't their weapons. I'm using my weapons and going to battle because I know that I've honed these weapons and I know that I've honed these skills to be really good at it. And in a society of social media that says you need to do X, Y, and Z to make money, it's just not true. You need to do what you're really good at. And you know what? You may not like it all the time, but you're really good at it. And being really good at something, you can win a lot of battles and learn skills, and then in between, you can learn something else. I know so many people who want the perfect job, and they want the perfect life, and they want the perfect spouse, and they want the perfect house, and they want the perfect everything. But the reality is that just doesn't happen. You've got to be willing to use what you're really good at and just do what you're really good at. The weapon that you have is your skills and God-given talent. So find that. And like David, choose stones. Choose what you're good at. And then go to battle with confidence of understanding that, no, I'm good at this. I can do this. Because yes, you may not win every single time, but you will move mountains and make a lot of headway in the goals that you have, because even if you don't love what you do, it will give you the opportunity where you can face some battles and win some battles, and then in the in-between you can learn to do something new and something else. Instead of just waiting, I hope one day I'll get this dream job. What does that dream job take? What weapons do you need to learn how to use? How do you prepare for the battles of this life? You literally have to choose what you're already good at and learn how to use those in that moment. Sometimes I want to face the battles in my life with the shiny weapons that I see other people using, instead of the God-given talents and the skills that I know I've honed for years of continued use. I've gotten better and better at it. And I love the quote from Bruce Lee. He says, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. There's a development that takes place, and you will become much better at facing battles and preparing for battles when you can recognize, I know that this is going to be in the cold. I know this is going to be in the heat. I know the terrain. I understand what I'm going to need. I need to dress accordingly. I need to face it accordingly. I need to understand what's going on, and I need to take my weapon. Not their weapon, my weapon. This is where I would be best, is if I position myself here on the terrain. If I position myself for success and use my weapon, which actually will position me and everybody around me to succeed much better. If your skill is leadership, stop letting other people in your life control everything you do. If your skill is leadership, you stepping up and making a plan will benefit everybody. If your skill is communication, then talk through things with people. Stop being quiet. If your skill in who you are as a person is just hospitality, stop letting people just float through your life and invite them over and just love on them and make them dinner, or just have them over and say, let's have tea. Let's have coffee. Just come over and I just want to be hospitable. You'd be amazed at how many things change when you step into the battles and you use your weapon that you have, the skills that you have, you use it in the terrain that you know to be most successful. And this is an area that I had to really face in 2025. Are you frustrated with being single at 36? And why? And I remember listening to a podcast where they listed all these red flags of men, all these different red flags. And my whole thought in my head was, okay, I'm going to become the opposite of all those. It's not going to happen overnight. But instead of getting frustrated at the circumstances of the fact that I was, single, I'm single at 36. Nobody really dreams of that. In that process, I decided, okay, we're going to make a change. I'm not going to sit here and be frustrated with the dating apps or the dating scene. No, the dating scene's pretty terrible, but I can't control that. What I can control is, who am I? Am I the guy? Am I the green flag? The reality is I have to have multiple conversations with myself every single week. It's not a green flag, Kyle. You can't do that. You don't get to do that. Because that's a red flag in somebody's eyes. Now there's other areas that I'm like, I can be a red flag to that person. I'm not worried about that at all. But there are certain things that I'm like, no, I can be better. I need to be better. And instead of complaining about it, I just need to choose. And it's helped me battle that mental battle of, I feel alone. So what are you going to do about it? And I started filling the battles that I was facing with solutions. Okay, what are my skills? What's the terrain? What can I control? What can I not control? What's the weather like? Am I preparing for it? Am I putting myself in position to win the battle, or am I putting myself in position to lose the battle? Sometimes if you go into a date and you're not really mentally there, and you're not really ready, you don't really care, you're not putting yourself in a position to succeed. So that's the conversation that I've had over the last few weeks with how do I prepare for battle? Why was 2025 so different? And I hope that you will be encouraged by this. And I hope that if you walk away with anything, you walk away with the understanding that you have skills, choose your skills, and understand and look at the terrain and where you're fighting this. If this is a financial battle, you can't go somewhere else. You need to face it financially, and you need to fight it on the financial terrain. Understand mentally that this is where you have to be. And if it's a situation of your job doesn't pay you enough to live the way you're living, then you need to find a new job that pays more. And if you can't do that, you need to learn the skills. You need to learn the things and lean into the things, or look for a job that utilizes your skills. Maybe that job doesn't pay as much, but maybe it'll get you there. It's an extremely difficult conversation to have at times, but it is one that has to happen. You have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm not as prepared as I thought I was, or like myself. I claimed to be something I'm not because I've never done it. But once you do it, once you've fought in the Coliseum of life, then you can call yourself a gladiator. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really, really appreciate each and every one of you. I'm so excited for 2026. There is so much on the horizon. I have so many high hopes for what this year is going to look like. Remember to like, subscribe, share this with a friend. Again, that really helps. But I hope that all of you will Share this podcast with some people who are going through battles and people who need to prepare for battles. And it's the beginning of the year, so you're going to face battles throughout this year. So if you need to come back to this podcast and remind yourself, okay, what's the terrain like? What weapons am I using in this situation? Do so, and I hope that you'll be encouraged. For everybody, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Remember to give grace, show love, and as always, stay stellar. Peace.